you're going to get the same level of service. I don't think you're going to get the volunteers that you got before. And so I don't see any way that we're going to get the same level of service. And I promise you, that is not included in that $300,000. And then finally, I think that you really seriously have to consider the cost associated with the risk that you incur when you do this. There is substantial risk. The first and obvious risk is that the level of service is not, that we're not getting the level of service that's required by the contract, okay? I know that this company has had problems in other cities not making payments and other kinds of problems, fiscal problems. The risk involved here is pretty substantial because once you turn this over to a private company, then you lose all the internal knowledge, experience that you need, that if you need to withdraw that contract, all of a sudden you do not have that depth in your own staff. And that's a huge risk that other companies have found when they have outsourced and had to try to bring things back in. And so I think that actually that $300,000 is much less than what you're saying. And just to repeat what I said originally, if we've got to have cuts in the library or this or that, I don't think the way to do it is to turn this over to an outside organization.
Have any of you talked with any city manager or library manager of any of the libraries that are now operating with an outside source? Have any of you talked to anybody?
They're not allowed to. They're not allowed.
Has anybody talked to any of those libraries?
They're not allowed to discuss it.
Have you talked to the city manager?
My wife she's very familiar with this company. She has also made the comment that if you look at Farmers Branch, that is a disaster. And I think all we have to do is look at the newspapers and see that. But she is familiar with this company. She does not have a whole lot of respect for this company at all.
Chris?
Dallas is not until the side. They considered it, but they decided against it for whatever the reasons were.
And the discussions we've had with the people at Farmers Branch is they have been very happy. My point is that you get different views depending on who asks the question. Yes, sir.
Well,
Speak loud.
somebody else get a mic.
You have to speak right into it.
I don't understand how they possibly.
Can't hear you. We can't hear you.
What's your name? Put it like you're going to kiss them.
Hello. I don't understand how they could save that much money and keep the quality as high. If so, if they could do that, then I think we could do it on our own. We can look into different kind of retirement programs. We can look into possibly even cutting a few people out of the staff. I don't know, but we can do all these same things and save the money the way we think it should be done.
Jerry Bush, you know, I was here one morning in the library, or the volunteers in the library presented a check to the library that was the equivalent of what was donated to volunteer labor. That check was in excess of $200,000. Additionally, the Friends of the Library contributes an awful lot of money for additional books, different programs that's going on. I don't see how an outside sourcing company could build this type of service, volunteers, additional funding into their proposal, or how you could even put it into the request proposal for them to say you have equivalent services provided. You know, and this lady said, a lot of volunteers, we don't mind volunteering. We want it to be for a cause we feel for, and there's a lot of plenty of causes out there for us to volunteer. I know I would not volunteer for a private corporation that's going to make money and stuff on what?
Could we please get a name?
I've worked for, I'm retired.
Your name, sir?
I'm sorry.
Pardon?
Your name?
Jerry Rubush.
Thank you.
That was one of the questions that was asked of Lancaster. Lancaster had LSSI for about 7 or 8 years. They had 3 or 4 different city managers that managed LSSI. And then the last city manager came in and he wanted to have all his own people in the city rather than having an outsource. So they terminated the contract. And then he came out with a press release, and what he said, and what he said when we talked to him, is that the LSSI library group actually went out and got over $500,000 in grants to the city for the library. He said that they were very active with a Friends of the Library type association group. And so the people from Lancaster, and that's only one story, they were very happy with the way they did exactly what you're talking about. But again, that's one story.
That's a city library.
Yes, sir. Awesome. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
My name is Matthew Gilson.
Speak up. Matthew Nielsen.
I don't need to call it microphones. I'm just going to go ahead and talk.
It's better.
I don't want to repeat some of the points that have been made here tonight because they're good points and we don't need repetition. But one point that hasn't been made is just the society interest here. A library is not something that you run for a profit. The interest of providing information to society and providing education and literacy to people in the community, the interest of a corporation, which should be for profit. I mean, they'd be stupid if they weren't. They're owned by a private equity firm. Private equity firm does not invest in companies that don't make money. But the interests of profit are contrary to basic public services. That's why we have public services. That's why we don't outsource the police and the fire and utilities. And so I think we're completely overlooking the fact that this isn't something that you should run for profit. Profiting is adverse to providing interest. I don't know what kind of political agenda this private equity firm has. And they're going to be the ones, I don't care what they say, they're going to be the ones making the decision about what books go into our community libraries. I don't want the standards of people in Maryland to dictate the standards of the community that I chose to move into.
Judge Hogan? I'm Tom Galley. I don't need a microphone either. I like libraries. I like them a lot. I spend a lot of time in libraries. I also like efficiency. Judge Hogan said that the library is staffed with 19 full-time equivalent people. That's true. But on Saturday, arguably the busiest day of the week, certainly the day that I get to use the library, there are only 14 full-time equivalent people. Now, if the library could run with 14 full-time equivalent people on arguably the busiest day of the week, why can't it run with 14 full-time equivalent people the other 6 days a week, or the other 5 days a week? I think the answer to that question needs to be honestly explored. I really do.
We have an answer.
Saturday is the 3rd busiest day of the week. Also on Saturday, we have that's busy per hour, and we have shorter hours on Saturday. On a day when we're open from 10 until 8 p.m., we need more staff than on a day when we're open from 10 until 4.
But that's full-time equivalent. That takes into account all hours equal. So it's 19 FTE, 14 FTE, it's the same number of bodies per hour.
And again, it's not the busiest day of the week.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Jim Bazinski. I'm a retired federal government employee that was in charge of processing facilities, both in Dallas and at least some in Missouri that use contractual employees. There were 250 in Dallas, 100 in Lee Summit, with another 100 doing data entry and taking fees in Chicago off-site. The point that the lady made here that I'd like you to consider, please, is $300,000. There still has to be oversight of managing the contract. That's a cost. You're going to have monitoring of that contract on some type of recurring basis, not necessarily daily, to see that things are done, especially if you're involved with fees of giving them monies of which to purchase books. You want to have that on an audit, etc. So those are some costs that you're going to have to incur taking off from that $300,000. So you'll have to hire a group of people to do that anyway. The other thing is that when you're in that contractual situation, you're going to have to delineate your work processes, and if you come up with a different idea of doing it, you're going to have to rewrite your contract to change those processes. You just can't go in and tell them, monitoring it, that they're not doing it the right way.
You're right, contract management is a skill. Yes, sir.
My name is Steve Ragnar, and I've had some experience with outsourcing. I worked on outsourcing $3 billion over 10 years. And at the time we did it, I bet $10. Not much. It wouldn't last 5 years. I collected my $10 last year, first of all. It may be more efficient. This gentleman was on the right track. Let me tell you what's going to happen. They're going to cut these costs, and they're going to cut your costs $300,000. They're going to cut the budget for this library $500,000 because they're going to have to cover the administration cost to operate their business, and then they're going to at least want $100,000 profit off of your $1.4 million or whatever you had on it before. So I think, don't look at it as if they're going to reduce it by $300,000 and you're going to get the same efficiencies. You're not. You're going to get a $500,000 less service. The other item was brought up about efficiencies. We got to remember, efficiency is really defined as improving the product for the same price, or keeping the same product at a lower price. And I think what you'll get out of this particular system is lower product and lower price. And I'll tell you, I go to the library. I'm in there, 4 times a month. The service is great. I like the idea that we have a good source for books and resources and access to computers for this community. And one of the problems in our country today is that we don't pay enough attention to education. We pay too much attention to money. And I'm a capitalist, don't get me wrong. Government has a role. And when Franklin and the other founding fathers set up the first library here, they didn't set it up so LSSI or whoever they are can come in here and run it and make a profit of it. They set it here for the people, and the people need to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Judge Logan, if we don't cut expenses, how much do we have to raise taxes to make up for it?
Every penny of tax is equal to about $680,000 income. So if you've got a $1.4 million, if you've got a $1.4 million budget and 1 cent of tax is equal to $680,000, the operation of the library is 2 cents for all of them. You cut off $300,000, it's about half a cent. Yes, ma'am?
My name is Christy Hartley. We frequent the library every week. My daughter volunteers there on the library page.
Can't hear.
Sorry, I don't know why. I'll try to speak up. My name is Christy Hartley. We frequent the library every week. My daughter's on the library page, and I'm a summer volunteer. Loves to work with the children. I don't think any of us would argue with your facts and figures. We agree that yes, we do need to cut money out of our budget. But there's a big difference between outsourcing all of the decisions and hiring possibly a consultant who would help us to make those hard decisions. I know that hard decisions have to be made, but I think the people of Rockwall County are smart enough to be able to make those decisions ourselves.
Fair Parish. Thank you, Judge.
We, the people of Rockwall, and I've been here for 37 years, have always come to the rescue, or whatever you want to call it, of whatever the concern was for this community. This is a community of people who care, and they care deeply. Now, there have been a lot of people come and go. A lot of people have come in here. They've had great ideas that turned sour, and they disappeared. They didn't stay here because they didn't like it. Let me just ask this question. How much opposition did the independent school district get in raising and redoing the football stadium?
Super, they got a lot.
We backed them, didn't we? We didn't?
Well, we did. I didn't.
Okay. Point is that it went up. Okay?
Yeah.
When the idea of moving the library out of the downstairs of this building in one room, the community supported that. We built, after one step in between, we built the library that we now have. And it's one heck of a library. And the people who run that library, in most cases, are residents of this community. They have an interest in this community. They are this community. When LSSI comes in, I can guarantee you, they will terminate everyone who receives money that works in the library. And they'll try to rehire them. Well, if they're going to save less money, they're going to have to rehire them at a much less rate than they're making now, with less benefits than they're getting now. Just common sense. Okay? I don't see the community not backing this library. What I would like to see is part of what this gentleman asked right here. What has been done, now that some of you are going to be upset with me, and I don't care. What has been done about the unthinkable thing of raising that tax enough to cover the next 5 years and keep the library just like it is?
Judge Hogan, has anybody thought about fighting the state statutes? Just because they have a law that says if you have 12 people, you got to have 7 JPs, why can't we go against them and say, hey, we are in a flat growth period, we are in a very low increasing income like everybody else is, why should we have to double our JP courts because we are not that big?
The answer to that question is no, and the chances of it happening are 0 and none.
I didn't hear that.
No, we have not.
Can we?
No.
Why?
Because it's a waste of time. It will not happen.
Well, our county attorney can do something. File suit against them. Everybody else is.
There are some things that you can make happen, and there are other things you can't make happen. Changing state statutes. For example, we tried to get one little old bill passed this year in the legislation. We, Rockwall, we, this county, tried to get one little old bill passed to raise the fees from the county clerk office for people who have fees, not passed. Rockwall tried to get one little old bill through so they could buy water companies, so that they could reduce the cost to a lot of their people. Didn't get through. Not finished yet.
Not finished yet either.
Not finished yet, but it's close. My point of it is,
I don't believe it.
you know, if you have to wait on something like, first of all, they don't come back in session for 2 more years. So if we want to do something immediately, we're going to do it for 2 years. And the chances of that going through, they're not good. Yes, ma'am?
Like we all descend on
I heard the gentleman to the right to me say that about refer to efficiencies in the present library. And I just want to say that today I talked to the director of the library, and I don't know how you can be efficient in your staffing or assigning your staff projects or whatever kind of assignments you might make if you don't know what the level of education of every person is. She said that she would have to check the resumes to find out their education level. So to that end, I would think that it just makes no sense that you wouldn't know what your staff's background is if you're going to make assignments to them. So to me, that speaks of waste.
They can't hear.
I have a couple of points and a couple of questions.
Louder.
Somebody asked why Lancaster has a why Lancaster contracted with LSSI. You probably remember they had a tornado. It blew down their library. They contracted LSSI to come on and rebuild and to build their library again. Judge, did you say that when we, in one of the workshops, that LSSI said that the book budget was too low, was way too low?
Yes, they did.
Okay. And Friends of the Library, as this gentleman said, does make significant contributions every year to the library for books, about $45,000 last year, about $20,000 for the Reading for Adults program, and another, I think, $3,000 for reconfiguring the large print area. And then there's some other capital outlay that will come out of the capital, the development fund, the monies that were raised originally in 1990 for capital expenses for the library when we went into the old post office building. So my understanding with LSSI contracts is that there is a 5% to 7% surcharge on ordering materials. So if the Friends of the Library were to continue to donate that $50,000 a year to supplement the book budget, because that's one of the areas that Marcine has cut, knowing that the Friends would help supplement that, then would 5 or 7% of that money go to their profits?
I don't know, because we don't have a contract. You can put in the contract whatever you want. I don't know.
Well, I think every contract that we've seen has at least a 5% surcharge on materials. So I have some concern that Friends of the Library would be donating money that a portion of it would go to the profits. So if there was an RFP, we'd have to make certain that that wouldn't happen, because I don't believe that legally we can donate money for a profit situation. And I guess the last thing is, how do you think LSSI actually knows what programs and services we offer?
I have no idea, but they do.
One company is
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just say one other thing about the full-time equivalency at the library? Even though your efficiency quotient says 14, what is recommended for a library that size is actually 22 full-time equivalents. When we voted the bond issue to build the library, many of us went out and talked about that, and we all said that it will cost a ½ cent to build a library, but it will also cost money, a tax increase, in order to staff that library. So I believe that the citizens, are willing to spend money to staff the library.